This fact blew my mind, and the implications of it are pretty interesting. So, everyone's heard of that, like, you are the combination of the 5 people you spend most time around, something like that. Right, and the same thing I think comes around from where you live. Like, there are bad places you shouldn't go in every city in the world, because that is where the most crime happens, right? Well, it turns out that's not strictly true, because within those areas, it seems that actually over 50% of police calls for the entire region, that entire area where someone says don't go to that area, come from only 3.5% of the area in that place. What? That's ridiculous. So these bad areas, dangerous areas, actually come down to a couple of blocks on a street in one area. It's crazy. And that the whole area gets this bad reputation when it's actually just that one street, and like literally across the road, it's no longer true. There's no more crime there than anywhere else in the city, which is nuts. So I'm getting my information from Talking to Strangers, which is a book by Malcolm Gladwell, and this was a scientific research paper, essentially, that it was referencing where they found this out, and it was kind of crazy. So my implications of this that I thought quite useful is people don't often take into account or spend enough time thinking about where they're going to live, right? And I met this guy whilst I was learning to ride my motorbike, and he was telling me all these crazy stories about how he gets stabbed, his bike is, everyone he knows has had their bike stolen, his bike just got stolen, everyone on that street's bike got stolen, and I was like, bro, move. Jesus. But this got me thinking from like a business context, as always, and I was thinking, can you drastically increase the likelihood of you being wealthy by moving to an area of people who get wealthy? Like, is that data available? Because if so, like, sign me up. I'd hang out with people who are wealthy, or, you know, be in the same sort of areas, have the same sort of drivers to make that happen. In that, it's same with these geographical locations, that this paper went into a bit of research about why it is, and some of the key things that stood out to me were the first iteration of the study was done in the States, and they were talking about the roads that pass through that area have to be like an artery, so like a key transit zone with areas of empty parking lots, and it has to be within a certain proximity of a school, of bus stations, blah, 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 blah. Because I think it ends up that crime is rather opportunistic. And these certain set of criteria, and the list goes on and on and on and on, build up higher frequencies of opportunity for someone to commit a crime, which is very interesting. And initially, that doesn't sound right. That sounds like a criminal isn't a criminal unless there's an opportunity to be there. And if you had a criminal there and you took away the opportunity, that they weren't going to commit a crime somewhere else, which is really interesting. Because in my head, I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Because I thought the same thing about suicide. And again, covered in this book, same thing, in that they were talking about building a net on the Golden Gate Bridge to stop people jumping off of it. It's the single most committed suicide point, I think, in that state, in California. And basically, when they petitioned everyone, saying, should we do this? Everyone turned around and said, no, if they're going to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves somewhere else. So, like, why waste our money? It's not going to do anything. And it turns out, some research was done on, I think it was about 570 people who were saved or intervened from jumping off of that bridge. How many of them committed suicide in the next 40-something years? And these were people that were there to do the deed, right? And it was something crazy. It was like 20 out of this 570. And so what's interesting about that is that it seems like suicide is actually coupled. People want to go in a specific way, that there are other ways that they don't feel like they would do it, and it just comes down to opportunity, the timing, the situation, and the person at that time. And I think it's likely to be the same with crime in this scenario. And that these places geographically, the areas around them that create those systems, that create the likelihood of that being a tough spot or a rough place, doesn't change much over time, and so those places stay rough. And then I wonder again, where does this go with people making money? Or who are happiest? I'd love to see the research on that. So if you know of any areas where you know there are wealthy people, you know that there are people who are happy, like, hit me up. I would love to know, because that is one of the quests that I have in life, is finding the place to live. I'm on my way to, currently in Bali, on the way to Australia to move there, to move to Melbourne for a year, because when we were there we got the vibe of great people doing cool stuff. So yeah, there you go. Thoughts of where you spend your time and the impact that has on your life. You know, if you go and live in that rough area, chances are you're either going to be subject to crime or you're going to become a criminal. So if I can move myself to somewhere where I'm either going to be subject to millionaires or be a millionaire, like, I'm keen. Alright guys, that's it for the day. Have a great one. Peace.